Hey, Mueller junkies. Thank you so much for all of your support. We've taken hundreds of new patrons on in the past few weeks, and we want to welcome you. You can now listen to the entire archive of bonus episodes. There's more than 30. You're also now a member of the MSW Book Club, and we'll begin reviewing Fear by Bob Woodward this month. You can also play in our Fantasy Indictment League now by joining our closed Facebook group called Friends of Justice, and look for the pinned post and announcements. And you'll get our weekly newsletter now, with all of our photos, memes, pertinent articles, and my personal research notes. This week, I got a message from a woman in servant leadership I admire who advised me that we are undervaluing ourselves, a mistake women can often make. So beginning October 1st, we're removing our $1 and $2 patron levels for access to all the bonus content I just described. Everyone currently at the $1 and $2 levels will get to continue being a patron at that level, but all new patrons beginning October 1st will be buying it at a $5 minimum. So sign up now to take advantage of all the extras as an official patron while the $1 and $2 levels are still available. And thank you again for supporting women in podcasting. Don't undervalue yourselves.
So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians.
What do I have to get involved with Putin for? I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him. I don't know anything about him other than he will respect me. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
So, it is political. You're a communist.
No, Mr. Green. Communism is just a red herring. Like all members of the oldest profession, I'm a capitalist.
Hello, welcome to Mueller, She Wrote. I'm your anonymous host, AG. I use a pseudonym because I work in Trump's executive branch, so I'm one of the lucky ones that gets to pay for tax cuts for the rich people by not getting a cost of living raise this year. Yay! So if you're rich, you're welcome. With me, as always, is Jaleesa Johnson.
Hello.
And Jordan Coburn.
Hello.
And this was a busy week, you guys. As expected, I think it's going to be continuing to be a busy week until on into next year. And joining us this week is Grant Stern. He's an investigative reporter and the producer of the Dworkin Report. And we also are lucky enough to have MSNBC contributor and staff writer for The Atlantic, Natasha Bertrand. Jaleesa is going to report on the GOP possibly releasing unredacted SF-86 security clearance application forms of Democrats running for office this year. That's crazy. And Jordan has some information on Trump's latest interview with Bloomberg, also crazy. I'll be going over our beautiful Felony Friday that we had this week. But first, I have a correction from the Greg Proops interview. I had said Chuck Rosenberg was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, when actually he was the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. I caught that listening back to the interview, so thank you, me, for letting me know about that. We have a lot to get to this week, so let's get into it with just the facts. Okay, guys, Sunday, Cohen's lawyer Lanny David walked back his remarks about what Cohen could potentially offer Mueller, including information about Trump having foreknowledge of the Trump Tower meetings and that Trump knew about and participated in the weaponizing of hacked emails from the DNC and the DCCC. Davis did not rule out that Cohen could have the information, but he said he couldn't corroborate the claims either and wished he'd been clearer. In other Cohen news, though, it's of note that his plea agreement states that the agreement itself does not preclude them from other prosecutions, including 18 U.S. Code 1960, which is, or 1961, I think, which is racketeering. It's RICO. So put beans on that. We had mentioned that last week, that he might be wrapped up in other investigations. So put some beans on it. There you have it.
Beans.
Beans. Then everybody started freaking out Monday about a report in Politico.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
The report was about a sleeper case that could supposedly torpedo the entire Mueller investigation. Basically, the D.C. Court of Appeals will hear a case next month about a guy who was murdered decades ago, and the Justice Department wants to set precedent that judges don't have the freedom to release grand jury information that's usually kept secret. And a lot of folks are afraid this could be a problem for Mueller releasing his report because Congress would be deciding to publicize it, not a judge. However, chill out. First, we need to vote in November because a Democratic Congress would render this point completely moot. If not, I think a court case could easily create an exemption, not to mention denying an indictment would automatically trigger a report to Congress, the Gang of Eight. And above all, Mueller, I'm sure, has every base covered, so don't let this stress you out. Then Bloomberg reported on a Russian guy in a California jail that is of interest to the Mueller investigation. This Russian guy named Yevgeny Nikulin was charged with hacking LinkedIn in apparently the saddest Russian hacking attempt ever. Who hacks LinkedIn? Anyhow.
It's like, it's a place for business.
It's a business place. Connections and network. Anyhow, he was charged in 2012 when he hacked LinkedIn and Dropbox, and he was extradited from the Czech Republic, that's an important note, back to the U.S. Moscow apparently had a dueling request to extradite him, but he landed in NorCal this past March. The trouble is, he could literally be insane. Defense is asking for a mental health evaluation of him because he just laughs with a 1,000-yard stare whenever he's asked questions. Like, I just imagine that. So where were you on the March 17th? Ha, 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 ha. Like, it's just
good times.
Good.
So creepy.
Yeah, it is weird. So they're having him evaluated. But the Russians are really interested in this guy. They've tried to visit him a few times without lawyers present, which is what is making him of interest to the Mueller probe. Maybe he's connected to Cohen. I don't know. Czech Republic, Cohen, Steele dossier. I don't know. I could just be making weird connections. But the story isn't very clear about any implications. But we thought we'd bring it to you anyway.
Yeah. Stop trying to contact him, Russia bros. What the hell? Stupid idiots.
We'll just
We'll just sneak in. No one will notice.
Yeah.
Also Monday, Roger Stone says he's about to be indicted, and he emailed all of his friends to ask for help with his legal bills. He even started a GoFundMe, which is hilarious. Peter Strzok's GoFundMe made $325,000 the first day, and Stone's has made about $2,900 after a week. And his douchebag grandson, by the way, who looks like an extra from the Jersey Shore, is also panhandling for Stone on the internet. This guy has like shaved head, Brill cream back hair, like he looks like he's got ears pierced, looks like he drives a Mitsubishi Eclipse. Anyway, he wears fedoras in his spare time.
Oh God,
probably a libertarian.
Maybe Stone should sell space on his back for. You can get your face tattooed on his back for $50,000.
I would do that.
Yeah,
not for $50,000, but I'd probably send him $100 if he tattooed my face on his back. or our logo, just Mueller, she wrote, really big.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
Contact us, Stone.
What a predicament. I wish we had the money to actually offer that.
I know.
We can give you $200,000.
I know. If we started a GoFundMe, we could probably raise $50,000 in a day to get our faces tattooed on his back.
Oh my gosh.
That's how much influence he has. Anyway, we'll keep you posted on what goes on with that. Also Monday, Giuliani told reporters that the president's lawyers have not heard back from Mueller's office in nearly 3 weeks. Remember their back and forth love letters? You know, will you set me free? Check this box. 3 weeks. And Giuliani says he thought that they would at least hear something back after the Manafort trial, but they didn't. Mueller's office has told Giuliani that they're still studying the latest letter from the Trump team. And Giuliani was like, it's only 5 or 6 pages, can't you read? And I'm paraphrasing. Giuliani says he figures they're planning something like issuing a report without interviewing the president, or he thinks Mueller might be weighing issuing a subpoena. Other options are he could be waiting until after the midterms to make his next move. September 1st, incidentally, marked the Giuliani-imposed deadline for major Mueller activity. But note that it's not until September 7th that we will actually be within 60 days of the election. And I'll talk a little bit more about what kind of bullshit I think his deadline is.
What do you think is the reason why Mueller's team is not responsive right now?
I think they're weighing a subpoena.
Nice.
I think they're done. I think they've done their due diligence. I think they can show they've done their due diligence, and I think they're just going to subpoena his ass.
Yeah.
I was hoping they would do it before September 4th because that's when the Kavanaugh hearings begin, which is Tuesday. But it's already the weekend, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's either that or just because Mueller is so traditional, waiting for the elections to run their course makes sense as well.
Yeah, I disagree with that a little bit. In that I don't know. Trump's not a candidate, but who knows what Mueller's thinking? There's no way to know. He doesn't ever talk. Then something of note dropped Monday evening. According to the Wall Street Journal, Manafort sought a plea deal during his Virginia trial, but the talks broke down based on issues raised by Mueller's team. The talks took place while the jury was deliberating in his first trial that would eventually find him guilty on 8 counts with a hung jury, leading to a mistrial on the remaining 10 counts. The prosecution had until August 29th to tell the court if it was going to retry the 10 counts, but they filed a motion to ask for more time, which the judge granted Thursday. We did get the release of over 2,100 pieces of evidence for the upcoming trial in D.C., and there's lots of interesting bits in there, including Trump's name is in a few of the emails, some bits about Project Veritas, and all the photos of all the tacky clothes are going to be allowed. They weren't allowed in the last one, but I guess Amy Jackson wants to see them.
Like socks?
The 3/4 sleeve python jacket. Disgusting. The trial was set to begin September 17th, but has been pushed back to September 24th. Nobody knows why, but it's probably because the defense asked for another week to review the evidence since the evidence took a week. It was delayed by a week coming out. Regarding the talks breaking down, Mueller's team has declined to comment, which means we get to guess. Yay! What we do know is that Mueller is the one who raised concerns. And here's what I think. And please note that this is conjecture. I'm not a lawyer. But when I think about this, I think about what we learned from the rural juror in the first Manafort trial.
I will never forget you, rural juror. I'll always be glad I met you, rural juror.
The rural juror was the lady that came forward and told us all that it was just one juror that was hung up on the remaining 10 counts. And even though she was a Trump supporter, she was compelled to vote guilty on all 18 counts because of the strength of the evidence, the documentary evidence. What we also learned from her is that the jury threw out Gates's testimony because they thought he was not credible. He's a slimeball. He's a dick. He was a liar and a thief, and they simply didn't take anything he had to say seriously. Even though he would have gotten 100 years for lying on the stand, they're like, he's a dick. We don't like him. So what if Mueller began questioning the credibility of Manafort as a witness? We always hear that testimony is gold, right? I've said it. But what if you're a complete piece of shit and the documentary evidence against you is your star witness like it was in the Manafort in the first trial? Manafort's testimony could actually hurt the case. So his proffer might not have been worth it, cost-benefit analysis, in order for Mueller to let him off the hook. By not cooperating early on, Manafort might have fucked himself because now that he's guilty on 8 counts, his credibility as a witness could be gone, dashed. And Mueller might realize that his documentation is enough to convict whomever Manafort would roll on. And there's another theory out there that the talks broke down because Manafort just wouldn't pony up the goods. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that there's an internal sort of standard that they set for maybe how many times someone gets caught in a perjury situation, that they'll be forced to essentially label them as like a uncredible,
incredible.
It's not incredible.
They're an incredible witness.
Uncredible witness. Non-credible witness.
Tainted.
Yeah, that is interesting to think, though. I really hope. I hope that they don't have to throw out Manafort.
Yeah, and I could be wrong. He could have the most amazing and intense information, and he's just not willing to hand it over.
Right. I mean, he does for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but he could be completely tainted. They might have learned in the trial using Gates as a witness that he's useless to them.
Useless.
He's useless to them.
I also think it's important to note that Manafort was found not guilty on 0 counts.
He was not acquitted at all.
Yeah.
And we still don't know if they're going to retry those 10 counts. So put some beans on it. Somebody said this week that when Maddow pauses, they expect her to say, put some beans on it, and they get sad when she doesn't.
That's funny.
Then we had some awesome reporting about a trip Nunes, that's Devin Nunes, that's Jordan's boyfriend, took to Europe on his never-ending quest to discredit the Mueller probe. And joining us today to tell us about what he was doing abroad is MSNBC analyst and staff writer for The Atlantic who broke this story, Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, welcome to Mueller, She Wrote.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm really honored. I can't believe you're here. I kind of have I'm nerding out a little bit that I'm talking to you. So bear with me. So do I have this right? Nunes, mullet boy, thought he could go to Europe and out-spy Christopher Steele?
Basically, yeah, he went over there and he had planned to meet with the heads of MI6, or at least high level officials in MI6, MI5, and GCHQ, and they could not find time for him. And I'm told that he was snubbed, essentially, and that when he wanted to have these meetings with them, they were very concerned, understandably, about his track record with dealing with sensitive and classified information. He has been known to compromise sources and methods in the past when it comes to kind of undermining this Mueller investigation. So they were understandably wary about entertaining his request for a meeting. So he came away meeting only with the Deputy National Security Advisor, and it's unclear to me whether or not he actually gleaned anything of value from that meeting. But it's highly unlikely that they would have told him anything about someone who served in their own intelligence service.
Do we know anything more about what he was trying to get? Any specifics on the things he was looking for, or how long he was there, and if my taxpayer money paid for this?
Yeah, so all good questions. I think that what I'm told is that he was looking for information about Chris Steele's record in MI6. Of course, he was there for just over 2 decades. He was the head of the Russia desk at MI6, and he was kind of trying to dig up dirt on whether or not that Steele ever had any problems with his superiors, or whether or not he ever kind of broke the rules. And he kind of, all in the name of discrediting him. And he also wanted to discuss with MI5, I'm told, whether or not MI5 knew about his Steele's ongoing communication with Bruce Orr, the top Justice Department official, who is the president's favorite target now after Peter Strzok and Andy McCabe were fired. He's kind of set his sights on Bruce Orr, who has known Steele since 2007. They've been friends for over a decade, and Bruce was very concerned about what Steele was telling him, and so he kind of debriefed him over the course of a couple months between 2016 and 2017 about the intelligence that he had found about Trump and Russia. So, of course, Devin Nunes was trying to kind of stir up trouble and try to figure out, was he doing this covertly without the knowledge of his own authorities? And of course, what I'm told is that he would have been disappointed because MI5 and British authorities, in fact, did know about Steele and Orr's communication.
Okay, the Orr thing makes more sense to me than Steele, because, didn't Nunes's own memo say that the Steele dossier was not what kicked off the investigation? I'm trying to figure out, it seems like he's grasping for straws at this point.
Right, and he's using, he still is kind of peddling this talking point that the dossier was the entire basis of the FBI's investigation. That really hasn't changed much. He says that it was the basis of the FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page, et cetera, even though, none of that is actually true. But yeah, they've set their sights on people within the Justice Department who they think had a hand in launching the Russia investigation, including Bruce Orr, who actually didn't have a role in launching the investigation itself. That was an FBI counterintelligence investigation. But of course, when you kind of dig in and attack the DOJ and FBI enough, then that talking point that it's all a witch hunt can take hold.
Yeah, although it seems with this new Washington Post polling that's out that it might not be working as well as they planned.
Right. It seems like the president's approval rating is kind of at an all-time low right now. I think it's 60% of people now disapprove of his job performance. So yeah, the Mueller investigation, I think it's hard to criticize something that we really know so little about. Mueller has been very, very quiet throughout the year and a half that he's been investigating all of this, whereas the president, of course, has been very loud. So I also don't think that the president is used to actually being held accountable for anything. So the fear that he now will be scrutinized over, people like Michael Cohen flipping on him, Alan Weisselberg, what Bruce Orr may now tell the House Intel Committee, Senate Intel Committee, I think is reason for panic.
Yeah, especially considering if the House flips, that Democrats are going to take over these committees and subpoenas will most definitely follow. So, I can see how the walls might be closing in a little bit.
Right. And we saw that list that Republicans are circulating now of all of the investigations that the Democrats plan to launch if and when they do take the House. And it really, it all has to do with Trump's ties to Russia, his business conflicts, the security clearance issue. It's going to be a busy time late this year and early next year if the Democrats do take over, because they're going to, I think, return with a vengeance. There's a lot that the Republicans have obstructed by way of actually thoroughly investigating all of Trump's many conflicts of interest, his many contacts with the Russians. The Republicans have kind of acted like the defense lawyers for the people that have been brought before the committees, rather than actual investigators, is what I've been told. So it should be interesting what we glean from that.
Yeah, that list is funny. It almost reads like a confessional. It's like, thanks, guys. Oh, Jordan has a question for you. What's up, Jordan?
Hello. This is Jordan.
Hey.
I'm the one that gets the lovely title of Nunes being my boyfriend because I said he was attractive one time.
Oh my God. You will never live that down.
No, never. That's how it's been going. I had a question for you that I think you would know more about than anybody else currently. So the talking point that I've been seeing for Nunes and for those select GOP members that are still allied with Trump as strongly as they are is that Bruce Orm had a wife who has a potentially, conflicting position within this. Could you talk a little bit about that and just how that can be negated and how it's basically a Nunberger that his wife has the position she has?
Definitely. So Nellie Orr is a linguist. She's an expert in Russian studies. She's fluent in Russian. So her role, and she was a professor at Vassar, my alma mater, so I may be a little biased here. But her role for Fusion GPS was as a contractor. And so what they would do was, she never had a permanent position there. She was kind of brought in on an ad hoc basis to, for example, translate documents that were given to Fusion that were in Russian. She was there to look for Russian media reports that would perhaps bolster intelligence that was given to Fusion by outside sources. So she was there as kind of the translator. But during the whole Steele dossier debacle, I don't actually know, and this is something I've been trying to figure out, what role she actually played in that project per se. I'm told that there may have been a few times when she was brought in to translate things and again to look for evidence in Russian media reports that some of the things that Steele was reporting were accurate and could be backed up. But that was really the extent of it. And of course, there is no evidence that what she was doing in any way influenced what her husband was doing. They've both known Steele for quite some time, again, for over a decade. So by, her working for Fusion is kind of just a weird coincidence, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely what it seems like. And of course, the GOP or their select members are trying to take this as an opportunity to say it was a big collusion effort on their side. So, I appreciate the insight into that. I just wanted to know some accurate facts about her and her involvement.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, I'm really glad you were able to join us today. Everybody, MSNBC contributor and staff writer for The Atlantic who broke the story. Congratulations again on this. Natasha Bertrand, thank you. I'm so happy we got to speak with her, you guys. I hope she comes back. She's such an amazing reporter.
She's awesome.
Yeah. And I love watching her on MSNBC. She breaks everything down. She's super succinct. She's got really great organization of thought. She's awesome.
Yeah. I like how she talks.
She's got a pretty mouth.
Yeah, good words.
Yeah, well, it's like easy to comprehend, like
exactly.
an approachable. Yeah, she presents things in a very approachable way.
Yeah, very easy to understand. So and being that is one of our missions here, I appreciated having her on. So
yeah,
thank you, Natasha.
Yeah.
Wednesday, we found out from CNN that prosecutors declined to grant immunity to a second Trump Organization employee, and that person was not called before the grand jury. The details are super limited. In fact, that's about it. So they didn't talk about when they discussed this potential immunity. Was it before or after Cohen pleaded guilty, or was it right close to it? Why didn't they call him to testify? They didn't say that, and we don't even know who it is. So it's kind of a dud story unless we can get the details on when their discussion happened, because if it happened close to or after Cohen's guilty plea, that kind of adds to our, conjecture that prosecutors are going after more than just Cohen in this case.
Totally.
Then Trump fired McGahn via tweet, though he said he was resigning. But like all Trump White House resignations, McGahn was taken by surprise and told...
Surprise, you're resigning.
Yeah. Whoa. It was kind of like when it happened to Comey. It's happened to a lot of people. They learn by tweet, and that's how it goes down. We put beans on this a while back when we predicted Emmett T. Flood. Remember? Q. I said, he's coming in as a ringer, man. He's going to take over McGahn's job. So I was probably less surprised than McGahn was. But it's important to note that McGahn did offer 30 hours of testimony about obstruction of justice to Mueller's team. And since Priebus and Bannon still have the same lawyer as McGahn, that means they're all cooperating. Otherwise, one lawyer wouldn't be able to represent all of them. It would be unethical. So remember that. And remember, the firing of McGahn is just going to be added to the pile of obstruction of justice in the end.
I'd be curious to see if he switches his lawyer now that he's resigning / fired.
Oh, if McGahn does?
Yeah, because on one hand, unfortunately, there's the possibility of them all being under the same lawyer because their story is all the same, but on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Well, no, not after 30 hours of testimony, and he still hasn't switched lawyers. I tend to think that he's cooperating, and it's been said. He said we're fully cooperating, and I think that if they don't have the same lawyer after he's fired or resigns. And the reason he's staying on is because they want to push the Kavanaugh nomination through. But I think the reason wouldn't have anything to do with a change in story. It might just have to do with a change in legal strategy.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. I'm hoping so too. Fingers crossed.
Fingies.
We also learned Wednesday that Mueller filed a motion Monday to block Concord Management and Consulting to join Andrew Miller's appellate case. So, Concord Management is a Russian firm that's been indicted by Mueller. And Andrew Miller is Roger Stone's cabin boy. He's the scheduler, and he's the one who held himself in contempt of court so that he could appeal Mueller's constitutionality to the D.C. Court of Appeals. Concord is the entity that funded the Internet Research Agency. So keep your eye on that, because I'm sure the judge will side with Mueller, though it would be funny to allow a Russian entity to join their side and try to make their case in high court. Like, it's me and the Russians. We're trying to argue against Mueller's constitutionality. That would be funny.
Yeah, how does that... I didn't know you could just join a case like that.
They filed a motion to join. Mueller filed a motion to not let them, basically.
Yeah, that's
like... They're Russians. No,
right.
And they're indicted and sanctioned.
God.
But I don't know. I kind of wish they would.
Yeah.
I don't think the judge will let them, though.
They're just trolls to their core.
Like, do you want to add giant judicial prejudice to your case? Okay. Then let's talk about this week's winner of the What the Fuck Award. The Wall Street Journal reported that the Justice Department is investigating whether a fugitive Malaysian financier named Jolo, who I'm going to call J-Lo, laundered tens of millions of dollars through two associates and used the funds to pay a U.S. legal team that included Chris Christie and Mark Kasowitz. We know who Chris Christie is. And Mark Kasowitz, that's one of Trump's awesome lawyers. Christie is representing J-Lo in an asset forfeiture case in California, and Kasowitz is repping him in Justice Department matters. And it's not clear whether Christie or Kasowitz knew they were being paid off with laundered, embezzled money. So we don't know if they knew. But finally, here's the kicker. J-Lo has also retained counsel from a guy named Bobby Birchfield, who has served as an ethics advisor to the Trump administration. So he's a failure. And Ed Rogers, a Republican lobbyist, is also consulting J-Lo. Now, here's where it gets fucking weird. Elliot Broidy is also consulting this guy. And he met Elliot Broidy through Pras Michel. You guys know who that is?
No.
Founding member of the Fugees?
What?
That Pras Michel.
No way.
Yeah, so now we have Ice Cube and Pras Michel wrapped up.
Oh, this is great.
Wait, who are the Fugees?
Killing Me Softly.
Yeah.
The Fugees. Yeah, Lauryn
Hill originated with that crew.
Yes.
Yeah, Wyclef Jean.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
No, and the other guys.
Yeah, and the other guys.
That makes sense. We got Kardashians and Wests.
That's true.
Kardashians and Wests and Ice Cube, and now the Fugees. Anyway, he may have been, Michelle, may have been one of the associates that laundered money with J-Lo, not Jennifer Lopez, Jolo, the Malaysian financier fugitive. And the Justice Department is investigating whether or not Broidy tried to sell his access to Trump to Chinese and Malaysian governments. So Jolo is so close to the Malaysian Prime Minister, Najib Razak, who we reported on a while back for being arrested in Kuala Lumpur for money laundering. Remember when we got his yacht and we're like, let's go party on his yacht? That was the asset forfeiture case. And now Chris Christie is repping his friend in his asset forfeiture case. And they got introduced through a guy from the Fugees. What the fuck is happening?
It's reality TV now.
That's, I guess, what you get when you vote for a reality star.
Yeah, seriously. Mueller's office is probably just like, please just stop. We do not have the resources to pursue.
Just don't bring Childish Gambino into this, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
How did he not win Video of the Year? Whatever.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, of course, I didn't see any of the other ones, but still. We're still on Wednesday, by the way. Mueller's team is asking to review emails between Manafort and one of his former lawyers. You never do this because normally those emails would be protected by attorney-client privilege, but these emails are special. Attorney-client privilege does not apply when the client hires the lawyer to help him commit a crime. It's called the crime fraud exception to attorney-client privilege, and we've talked about it before. And that's what Mueller, I'm not guessing, Mueller says that's what's happening here in his filing. So Mueller wants to see 4 emails, and they're asking for the attorney to also testify. So you tell me, is Manafort still being investigated? Superseding indictments are coming. That's conjecture, but we're right.
Yeah.
Business Insider reports this week that bank examiners and the feds are investigating an unusually large payment deposited into the account of the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. Do you know when it happened?
2017?
November 2016.
Oh, damn. Oh,
right after the election. He got a $120,000 payment, and it came from a Russian embassy. And we have long since suspected the Russians are using their embassies to move money around the U.S. Unnoticed. The check was marked payroll. However, it was more than twice as much as the ambassador makes in a year. As a refresher, Kushner met with Kislyak in December 2016 to set up a back channel. Flynn was fired for lying about meeting with Kislyak. Sessions recused himself for lying to Congress about meeting with Kislyak, and Trump told Kislyak in the Oval Office that he fired Comey because of the Russia thing. But I'm sure, though, that this $120,000 payment is nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Who is the payee on that payroll check?
Who got it?
Sorry, not payee, payer.
The Russian embassy.
Aw.
Yeah, then they've been funneling money through the embassies
yeah.
for a while.
Maybe they just gave everyone a 200% pay raise.
Just for that day?
Yeah.
Just right after the election? Yeah, they did.
Just to cover it up. Everyone gets paid double today. Congratulations.
You guys did a lot of work. All that envelope stuffing, that's what you get. Wednesday, a big story dropped about Paul Ryan's super PAC using classified security clearance application information from Democratic opponents as opposition research. And this is fucking gross. And Jaleesa is going to go over that later for us. And Papadopoulos accepted a plea deal, and he decided he will not fight the charges. His sentencing happened September 7th. I think it's interesting that there was chatter about Papadop maybe blowing up his plea deal and going rogue and having a trial, but it's no wonder he had second thoughts after we found out from the rural juror that they threw out Gates's testimony and that talks about Manafort's plea deal fell apart when Mueller had concerns. So that could have been part of it, or he just realized he didn't want to go through what Manafort's going through. Mm-hmm. Finally, Thursday happened. It took a while, but Thursday came, and we found out Trump wanted to buy decades of dirt on himself from the Enquirer leading up to the election. And this is important because if he spent money on this and if it influenced the election and he didn't report it, that's a felony. And if he did this in cahoots with Pecker and some other folks, then we have conspiracy. According to multiple Trump associates, he and Cohen plan to buy the whole safe's worth of Trump dirt going back to the 80s from Pecker and the Enquirer in the months leading up to the election. And if you remember the recording of the tape, with Cohen's tape, where he said he had to set up a company in his name for, quote, all that info, indicating it was more than just the McDougal payoff he wanted to buy from David, which is David Pecker.
David. Air quotes.
David, air quotes. Dave.
Could be any Dave.
So in a perfect fantasy world, he would get charged, Trump being he would get charged with conspiracy to commit a federal election campaign violation and also actually committing that campaign violation.
He could be charged with wire fraud, bank fraud, tax fraud, RICO violations, campaign finance violations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sexual assault. Yeah, I don't know if they could tie that in just from the recordings, but
Mueller can't get it.
Yeah.
You
if
never
he paid
know.
to do it.
Prostitution. That would be an interesting throw in there. Just prostitution.
Is that the end?
Plot twist.
It's still illegal.
I guess it's just a legal question then. So with all of those potential charges, then do you essentially get to double down on that by charging them with conspiracy to commit all of those things?
Right. If there's more than one person involved and it's known to be and then there's also misprision. Mm-hmm. They could be charged with that too when you're covering up a felony.
Yeah.
So there's tons of different things in here. And also, I need to remind everyone Weisselberg was the one who was going to set it all up. And that was noted on the tape. And in fact, Cohen was like, Weisselberg, Alan Weisselberg. Like he said his full name. Like,
yeah,
that's funny.
And he's immune.
Yeah, he has immunity.
Right, yeah.
But the deal never went through, guys, to buy all the shit. AMI backed out and advised Cohen to shred the documents, and Cohen did not. Then, if that weren't enough, another top executive from AMI named Howard, who is the guy that removed all the Trump dirt from the safe, he went in after the election, got all the Trump dirt out of the safe, and whisked it away in the night to somewhere we don't know where.
He threw it in the ocean.
But I love sets it free in the ocean, right?
Yeah. Or returns it to the devil. These are yours, I believe. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Same time.
Thank you. Anyway, so he was granted immunity, Mr. Info Whisker, deal with the devil. And the Associated Press reported Thursday that the Enquirer and AMI are in serious financial trouble. Like, they're almost bankrupt, and they have been for a while, like for the last few years. So then the question becomes, why would AMI be willing to make these large payments to Trump playmates and run bullshit covers for him if the paper was sinking? Why would Howard and Pecker be willing to tank the paper to cover for Trump? Was Trump paying them off or promising them he could be Secretary of the Army or something? Like, what's going on there? And with these two executives that now have immunity, I'm sure we'll find out.
Mm-hmm. So even if the deal didn't go through, he could still be charged with conspiracy to commit that.
Yeah, and that's important to remind Rudy Giuliani, who actually went to law school, even though I didn't, that you don't have to commit or complete the crime in order for you to have been conspired to commit one.
Right. Attempted murder is still a really big deal.
That is. Like, like when they say, the Trump Tower meeting, nothing came of it, so it doesn't matter. No, it does. If you conspire, and anyway, they don't seem to understand that, or at least they do fully understand it, and they're trying to convince their idiot base that that's the case.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, Judge Ellis himself also was like, remember when he told the prosecutors, let's not bring up, fraudulent loans that didn't actually go through.
Yeah, and he had to apologize for saying that because that's not how the law works. Yeah, You're right. I forgot about that. Finally, we get to Friday, and I was really looking forward to Friday because it was the last full day before the Giuliani window of prosecution that some assume Mueller can't operate inside of, right? Like from September 1st, after Labor Day, you can't wear white and you can't indict.
Oh my God, what if Mueller does both? That'd be so sexy.
He comes out in he has a white shirt, right? Yeah. Don't wear white, don't indict. That's if you have trouble remembering what to do.
That's so good.
After Labor Day.
I love that.
Or he may operate, just not release any charges or plea agreements or indictments or referrals or motions. But then again, he might just keep going because Trump is not a candidate and the DOJ policy can be easily overridden by Rosenstein anyhow. And it's more of a guideline. It's not even a rule. It's just a norm.
A principle matter, yeah.
Yeah. So Friday started out pretty slow with the news that 2 lawyers have left Mueller's team. And everyone asked me, what's going on? Well, here's what we know. We know 2 lawyers left. And here's what I think. One of the lawyers I know he was working on the Vanderswan case, and the other guy was working on Russian indictments. And I think they're just finished with their work. Their specialties are no longer needed. They came in to work on the Russian indictments, one of them, and the other guy was a computer guy, and he was working on the Vanderswan case, so maybe they just don't need him anymore. Or the computer guy was working on the Russian indictments, sorry. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure we'll find out sooner or later. But Mueller's team says they actually made a statement. They said that they didn't leave for any untoward reason.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I believe it.
Yeah. That's rare they actually issue a statement over those things.
Well, gossip it makes an impression, so they have to, I guess, clear the air.
Definitely.
Yeah. But it is weird. You're right.
Yeah, it was a very short statement. Nothing to see here. Now we're going to go back to indicting your asses. And Friday started to heat up a little when we got word from the Associated Press that Bruce Orr said Christopher Steele told him in a breakfast meeting on July 30th in 2016 that Russia had Trump, quote, over a barrel, which is a horrible mental picture.
Yeah, like getting spanked?
Bent over a barrel? Is that what?
Yeah, think more Pulp Fiction.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm not going to play the clip because
we don't need to go.
Kids could be listening. And in that, the guy who was over the barrel actually comes back and kills the shit out of everybody. But Fusion GPS, Orr's wife worked for Fusion GPS, Nellie, and they both are under constant Twitter siege from Fuckface McGee because they know what he did. We had known that these two had breakfast, Steele and Orr, but that little nugget has been missing from the reports. It wasn't in Russian roulette, which is where we got most of that information. So interesting, over a barrel. Thanks for that mental picture on Friday. Then later on, the U.S. Attorney in D.C. filed a motion to impose a gag order on Butina's lawyers. And we kind of saw this coming because Butina, first of all, Butina is the Russian NRA lady, friend of torsion, dating Paul Erickson, wrapped up in the Mayflower stuff. And she's kind of a wannabe spy. And she was really working hard on influencing the election, particularly the RNC platform at the Republican platform at the RNC again, regarding Ukraine. But she was moved from prison to prison. She's in jail right now because she's a flight risk. And anyway, they put a gag order on her lawyers because her lawyers are out talking to the press, like, hey, here's what's happening, blah, blah, blah. Right. So they're like, nope, no more talking to the press. So we'll see what that happens with it. But they did issue the gag order. No, the U.S. Attorney filed a motion to impose a gag order. I don't know if it's been approved yet or not. Not as of this recording. So, But then Friday delivered hard. We had a Felony Friday, and I'll go over that in hot notes. But before we go to break, we have some feel-good polls. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you, but they're going to make you very happy. Throughout the past months, I've promised things would go our way, and I've done what I could to help you guys tread water and keep a hold on hope, right, that justice would prevail. And then we had that amazing Tuesday, and things were looking up. And now a Washington Post poll just came out with some awesome shit. It gives Trump a 36% approval rating, lowest to date, and a 60% disapproval rating. And what's funny is all the Trump supporters on Twitter think that it means a 60% approval rating, which is hilarious because they don't read. This is an all-time haters gonna hate record. It is, like 60% disapproval rating is huge. Also, 49% of Americans say Congress should begin impeachment hearings, while 46% say they should not. More people think we should have impeachment hearings. 53% say they think Trump has tried to interfere with Mueller's investigation in a way that amounts to obstruction, while 35% say he hasn't. And 45% approve of Trump's handling of the economy, while 47% disapprove. So his one big thing, the economy, he's underwater on it. This is proof that Americans aren't buying his bullshit attempts to discredit Mueller, nor are they buying Giuliani's Lube the Truth tour, which we've been covering for a while. And further, 63% of Americans support the Mueller investigation now. It was 48%. Remember? It's 63% now since the Manafort guilty verdict. And only 29% oppose this investigation. And 67% say Mueller's case against Manafort was justified, while only 17% say it wasn't. That's lower than his core base of like 35%, 30%. 53% oppose Trump pardoning Manafort, and only 18% support it. And 64% say he shouldn't fire Sessions, with only 19% saying he should.
Wow.
61% of Americans think Trump committed a crime, while only 31% say he did not. So the tide is turning, my friends.
And that's before shit really pops off. I feel like once everything starts getting laid down, the bigger indictments, I mean, we're already so close to it's a majority, but like, a solid like 75 plus majority, like we're not that far away.
Well, and the reason for this major turn, if you kind of break the numbers down, it's the independents.
Oh.
Since the Manafort trial, the Manafort guilty verdict, that have flipped.
Yeah.
Still, a lot of Republicans support him, and still a lot of Democrats support Mueller. But it's those independents
making the difference
that have jumped over onto the right side of history, basically.
Yeah, it's so much hinged on that trial, and the fact that it went the way that it did is huge.
Yeah. So, thanks, Mueller.
Yeah. Thanks, Manafort.
Keep the faith, everybody. We'll be right back. Hey, Mueller junkies, I wanted to tell you about another podcast you should check out. It's called The Daily Zeitgeist. It's a daily comedic news podcast from How Stuff Works, and it's hosted by Jack O'Brien, who is the founder of Cracked.com and the former host of the Cracked podcast. Every weekday, Jack and his co-host, Miles Gray, and a guest comedian, yay, guest comedians, will take you through the most important events and interesting ideas that are driving the news cycle. They'll make you laugh while they tell you exactly what's going on in the nation's mind. Some of the recurring segments include Over Under, which is an analysis of things in the culture that are either overrated or underrated at that time. Benghazi, this is a digest of all the men being caught behaving badly. There's the Bloyd Watch, which is a weekly report on the narratives being published by the tabloids, and Google Trend Skim, which is a look at what America's searching for. New episodes are released every weekday with a weekly roundup on the weekend. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So please check out The Daily Zeitgeist. And thanks for listening. Hot notes. Hello, welcome back. Today, Jordan is going to cover the Bloomberg Trump interview, but first, Jaleesa has a disturbing story on the Paul Ryan super PAC using Democratic security clearance applications as Oppo research. Jaleesa, do you want to tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. Super disturbing. So the New York Times reported this, that basically one of Paul Ryan's super PACs, the Congressional Leadership Fund, illegally obtained the full unredacted security clearance form of former CIA officer and Democratic candidate Abigail Spanberger through a FOIA request, and then immediately began using it against her in the campaign. So she's running against Republican Congressman Dave Bratt in a super competitive district in Virginia. And basically what happened is the Trump administration gave extremely personal information about this Democratic candidate to a Republican opposition research firm, and then they gave that information to reporters. And here's why that's really bad. So first of all, it's illegal for the government to release someone's security clearance form without their permission because it includes super sensitive information like the applicant's full social security number, their medical history, family history, relationship history, all that stuff. And the government is supposed to protect that kind of information. Secondly, to release this information, it's a threat to national security. So security clearance applications are designed to figure out if you have anything that makes you a liability. Anything that basically could be used against you by a foreign adversary. And I mean, basically, if the person is squeaky clean, it's still an issue that the exposure of their personal information could put them and their agency at risk. So journalists aren't even allowed to file FOIA requests to get someone's full security clearance application. And even if they tried, they'd just be sent back like a super blacked out redacted version that they can't even read. And that's to protect the information. It's the way it's always been until now. So as a result of all of this, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee just sent out a warning to all Democratic congressional candidates who may have submitted a security clearance to prepare for their information being leaked by the Trump administration. And so this comes after Trump strips the security clearances of government officials like Brennan. And so now we have this. And for me, this is conjecture now. I basically feel like the biggest issue is not the fact that it's private information being submitted. It's Trump finding any way possible to use his authority as president to be political. And
an abuse of power,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah. And so some people are just saying like, oh, she just, this is politics as usual. Like people always leak information. This is coming from Trump. So it's a huge deal.
Yeah. And it's not, and when you're pressuring federal agencies to get, to hurt your political opponents, that's abuse of power. It was an article of impeachment for Nixon when he was pressuring the IRS to do tax audits of all the Democratic candidates.
Yeah, and they're trying to blame the U.S. Postal Service. They're like, oh, you should go check with them and see why they let your information go.
Bob sitting there. In the
well, the U.S. Postal Service apologized, and this is why I think he put the his thumb down on the U.S. Postal Service. Remember earlier when he was trying to get the Postmaster General pressuring them to raise the rates on Amazon?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, the USPS issued a statement saying, we're sorry, we did this, it was human error. And then at the end, they just kind of go, it's happened a couple other times, but it won't happen again.
Okay.
So you've done this for others, and who, and it's just sort of stopped there, and that's the frightening thing, and that has to indicate to me that Trump is putting pressure on the Postmaster General in some way. He's got some sort of a dirt on the Postmaster General and is making this happen. That's all conjecture.
Yeah, but I mean, it's super likely, and it's become the new normal. This is just something, like you said, it's scary because they might just get away with doing things like this that little by little just chip away at the privacy of high officials.
Yeah, and why else would the post office take the blame?
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of wondering what could they have done wrong that warrants them getting, apologizing.
It says that basically what they're indicating, what the implication is that it was a human error. They received a FOIA request and released a full unredacted document by an error. But then they said they've also done this a few other times, and they're real sorry, and it won't happen again.
We should probably find out the other times then. They said they're looking into it, but...
Yeah, well, I hope she brings a lawsuit because this breaks HIPAA, it breaks privacy laws.
Totally.
It's against the law. This isn't just one of those norms.
Right. It's a huge deal. Yeah, she did a cease and desist, but yeah, I wonder if she'll do a lawsuit.
And did you see the letter they sent out to all the Dem candidates?
Totally, yeah. Basically saying that prepare for your security clearance forms to be released if you've ever done one, if you have a national security background. So, and a lot of Democratic candidates are running with that background. It's a huge wave of like former CIA
There's
people.
a good 15 or 20 at least.
Yeah. So they're being targeted specifically.
That's like a cheat card for campaign oppo research too.
Totally. It's
Literally.
everything. It's like, have you ever smoked pot, like,
a document looking for things that make them potentially like
just look
not
sketchy.
trustable.
Yeah. And her thing specifically is that I guess she used to work at some Islamic school. She did substitute teaching. And so that's what they're trying to use against her the most in these like attack ads and these robocalls.
She taught brown children?
She taught brown children. Well, the thing is, people at the school have been arrested, like students for terrorism. And they're saying just because they're brown and there were acts of terrorism that this is somehow a big...
She was teaching them terrorism.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I see.
All the Columbine teachers should be arrested.
Thank you.
And Obama was the founder of ISIS.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
It's crazy, but I'm sure it's working with the base.
Wait, you guys, it's all coming together to me now. We're gonna have to cancel this podcast because it's clear to me what's happening.
Oh
now.
yeah,
I'm gonna go join QAnon.
Yeah. You've been bamboozled.
We've been so wrong.
Q-boozled. You've been Q-boozled.
Oh man.
All right, well, that's frightening.
Yeah.
Gee, thank you for that reporting. And
course,
this blows my mind. That's a huge story. There's so many that came at us this week, but that's a pretty big one. Now, Jordan, this was amazing. What do you have for us? That Trump did an interview, with Bloomberg?
Yes, with Bloomberg was on Thursday.
Bloomberg was on the warpath this week, by the way. They came out strong. We're going to get some of these Pulitzers from the New York Times and Washington Post. Watch us. So this interview, let's hear about it.
Yeah, in this segment called, I'm calling it, Trump Speaks, Please Stop. When he's doing interviews. He keeps doing interviews now. It's like, stop fucking talking, you God. Okay, so anyway, on Thursday, Bloomberg meets with him in the Oval Office. And so essentially Trump says that they're talking about Jeff Sessions, which this has been in the news lately, most notably Trump calling Sessions an ineffective attorney general, essentially, that is not loyal to him. And he talks to Bloomberg. He continues this narrative. He says that he will allow Sessions to stay at least until November, despite him allowing this quote-unquote illegal investigation to continue. What a benevolent guy Trump is. He's gonna let his attorney general stay through November. When Bloomberg follows up with that comment and then asks him if he was gonna let Sessions stay past November, Trump declined to comment. Sketchy as fuck. So some good quotes from this interview. Some quotes include, quote unquote, I do question what Jeff is doing. I just want to, I would love to have him do a great job. All right.
So weird.
Yeah. So, of course, this is him trying to spin this narrative that Sessions is maybe in cahoots with other forces trying to undermine Donald Trump. But because he's such a great guy, he's going to let him stay in his position that he appointed him for.
Well, we all know Jeff Sessions to be the liberal deep state fella that was all grown and loved, completely totolerant, not bigoted
champion
at all.
Yep. Yeah, the racist possum. We just call him that for fun, not because it's based on anything. When Bloomberg asked him in this interview if Trump will accept an interview with Mueller, Trump says, quote, I'll see what happens. And then he goes on to say, I view it differently. I view it as an illegal investigation because, quote, great scholars have said that, quote, there never should have been a special counsel. All right. Once again, just going right to the...
Great scholars.
Yeah, exactly.
I love... Carter Page has a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, that says something, I guess. I don't know what it says, but it says
you can
something.
buy a PhD, apparently.
It says I'm really not as proud of my PhD as I used to be.
No, don't let him taint
You're one of the
pool.
good ones, AG.
Yeah. When he said great scholars, I was trying to think of like who's a baby
Socrates.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Great scholars. Then on Thursday evening, that same day, at a rally in Indiana, Trump goes on to say that he'll have to get involved at some point if the law enforcement agencies don't, quote, straighten out.
That's so messed up.
It's so messed up. So reflecting on these comments that he makes to Bloomberg, basically, and on the road that same night, Republicans in Congress are now saying they expect the president to get rid of Sessions after the elections in November, despite them warning him in the past that the Senate would not be able to muster the votes to confirm a successor. So there's a growing group of the GOP that is not on board for him ousting Jeff Sessions at all.
Yeah, and if we flip to Congress, do you think you're going to be able to get anybody through?
Right.
Honestly?
Right.
Even now, I think you would have a hard time firing Sessions and getting anyone through, particularly the Senate. They're a little more scrupulous than the House. But, I mean, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah, and congressional members, too. It's like their patience is wearing thin.
I think I know what they're doing. They're trying to signal their voters that they have to vote for Republicans because if they don't, I can't fire Jeff Sessions.
Exactly.
Or something.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's true. Like, the buck is going to stop once we flip Congress blue for him. So much is going to change. There's a really good quote this week by Senator Lindsey Graham, Southern Carolina senator.
Good.
Southern Carolina. Can we stop?
Yeah.
All right.
No,
hold
we're
on.
leaving that. That's awesome.
I love it.
He's in Northern Carolina, Southern California.
I put SC like an idiot here, so I'm like,
Well,
oh,
to
yes,
us-
Southern California.
Yeah, logical.
To us, that's SoCal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his accent and general demeanor just rings Southern California.
Super surfer, like, hey, bro,
Yeah.
tailing in fire Sessions, hell, they'll be hell to pay.
Yes.
California burrito.
Now, when you say good quote, do you mean good or do you mean interesting?
I think it's good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
What did he say?
I think it's good. So, Republican Senator of South Carolina, Lindsey Graham says, quote, he, meaning Jeff Sessions, is not the only man in the country that can be Attorney General. He is a fine man. I'm not asking for him to be fired, but the relationship is not working, Graham said on NBC's Today. Is there somebody who is highly qualified that has the confidence of the president and will also understand that their job is to protect Mueller? Yes.
No.
Right. Yes, I think we can find that person after the election if that is what the president wants. So I say I like this quote because of his bit about understanding that their job is to protect Mueller.
Yeah, he did add that.
Yeah, that's important.
Interesting that he threw that in there. Maybe after his buddy McCain died, he had to come to Jesus or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't keep being a dick. McCain's watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so he has that interview with Bloomberg, and then he says, I'm just going to report on the other place he popped up in the media this week. In his interview with Bloomberg on Thursday, Sessions wasn't the only target. As we know, NAFTA and high-stakes trade talks have been in the news this week, with Trump going around swinging his mouth dick as usual with no decorum. And some of his word vomit that was meant to be purged in private and off the record included secret and disparaging remarks about Canada. You may have heard about this. It came out in the news late this week, and they were picked up by the Toronto Star. So Trump said in his interview with Bloomberg, off the record, that he's not making any compromises at all with Canada, and that he could not say this publicly because, quote, it's going to be so insulting they're not going to be able to make a deal. Trudeau and other high-level officials confronted Trump about these leaked remarks on Friday, and Trump goes on to say that the leak was a breach of trust, but also, good, now Canada knows how I really feel.
Yeah, they were a little sketchy about how you felt after you accused them of burning down the White House in the 1800s when you wanted to have the tariffs put on them for national security reasons. Very scary country, Canada.
Yeah. So I always fear is struck into me whenever I think of Canada.
You know what probably happened is he probably said, I'm going to say this off the record. They're a bunch of fucking assholes. And everyone's like, I never said you were off the record. And like just went and told the Toronto Star. Like you can't just say it off the record and make it be off the record. I think it has to be agreed on by both parties.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't read anything about it.
I could be wrong. I just could just be making up that's a Canada rule and I'm just making it up. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, whatever happened, he of course takes to Twitter after this gets released, and I love his tweet. It says, wow, I made off the record comments to Bloomberg concerning Canada, and this powerful understanding was blatantly violated. Oh well, just more dishonest reporting. I'm used to it. At least Canada knows where I stand. I feel like you could replace the words Bloomberg with Rachel and Canada with Becky, and it would read exactly the same because our president is a high school girl. That's exactly what this reads as.
So did Bloomberg leak it or the Toronto Star?
No, so Toronto Star didn't leak it. Someone who was in the interview or got word of what he said in the interview leaked it to the Toronto Star.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
But Bloomberg didn't
Bloomberg was not the
necessarily.
source. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means, it was someone that works with Bloomberg that leaked it still.
I personally think Trump's people leaked it.
Yeah. That are just turning on him slowly.
Or to continue the fake news narrative.
Yeah.
That the news is attacking him. I think this is all a Trump
yeah, that's very true, too.
created drama. This doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah. And
not from the Bloomberg side.
Exactly. Yeah. So Bloomberg was not the source of the comments themselves. It came from another source. So, don't hate on Bloomberg or do. I don't really care. I think that it's needless to say, U.S. and Canada were unable to reach a deal by Friday, which was the informal deadline set. So talks are supposed to resume on Wednesday. And I'd like to end this with a classy quote that Trudeau says in response to all of this. He says, "We will only sign a deal if it is a good deal for Canada. Over the past year and a half, there's a lot of things that have been said from time to time. I think people have noticed that our government's approach is always to stay constructive, positive, to engage on the substance of issues, and to demonstrate that we understand that the path forward is one of making sure that there's a win-win-win on all sides." So I'm just going to start posting Trudeau quotes, I think, whenever I'm in need of something presidential.
Yeah, or just reply to Trump tweets with Trudeau quotes. I think that would be great. He would love it. He'd be like, "Thank you for sharing that immense, wonderful quote with me."
Yeah, I'm going to steal that. And then he uses it. Old Melania style.
Nice.
All right, well, thank you for that. I don't want him to stop talking. I think it's amazing every time he opens his mouth. So.
Yeah, this is true.
All right, well, I want to cover Felony Friday, you guys. This was so good. Remember when we saw a picture of Mueller at the National Airport in close proximity to Don Jr.?
Yeah.
And I speculated they were flying to New York, and it turns out they were. And then we learned that Mueller was actually handing off several lobbyists to the criminal referrals on lobbyists to the Southern District of New York that included both Republicans and Democrats. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Well, one of them rolled on Friday.
Oh, nice.
And it was in the same court to the same judge Manafort will face September 24th. Amy, Judge Jackson, if you're nasty. The guy's name is Samuel Patten. He's a Republican lobbyist, an associate of Paul Manafort, and an employee of Cambridge Analytica. He struck a deal Friday, pleading guilty to one count of failing to register as a foreign agent, and he's agreed to cooperate with the government. He was charged by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia after he was referred by Mueller, and his plea agreement stipulates now he must cooperate with Mueller. He has to cooperate with the special counsel's office. The fact that Mueller handed this off and then it came back to him jives perfectly with our evidence laundering theories. And additionally, I also think he's spreading this out. He's putting this in handing all this off to protect the investigation if something should happen to him, either with the firing of Sessions or the firing of him or the firing of Rosenstein or the installation of a pro-Trump stooge like Benchkowski that could stymie the probe. It's just like Justice Whack-A-Mole. He's like, here, you have it, you have this, you have this, you have this. Go ahead, try to stop it, I think it's beautiful. And because he knows anything he hands off, if it's got to do with Russia, he's going to get it back. And that's exactly what happened in this case, which we've been saying this whole time. So Samuel Patten, he worked for the same pro-Putin Ukrainian faction that Manafort worked for, called the Opposition Bloc. And he is also allegedly the boss of Konstantin Kilimnik. That's Manafort's buddy, right? As a reminder, Kilimnik is the guy that Manafort emailed back and forth about becoming whole with Oleg Deripaska, right? He was kind of his go-between to Oleg Deripaska through private campaign briefings. Mm-hmm. He's the guy Manafort was having dinner with at 666 Fifth Avenue the night Deripaska's private jet landed in Newark, and then they took off for that yacht meeting in Norway with the Prime Minister of Russia, and Nastya Rybka was on the boat, and she took the video, remember?
Mm-hmm. This is the guy Tad Devine knows a bunch about too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Kilimnik is also the dude that tried to help Manafort tamper with witnesses while he was in jail. And he's the co-defendant with Manafort in his upcoming September 24th trial in D.C., though he won't be there. He left. He snuck away. Samuel Patten's payments also went through a Cypriot bank account, much like Manafort's did. According to the criminal information document, Patten and Kilimnik started a lobbying firm together and were paid over $1 million from 2015 to 2017. Manafort was lobbying for Yanukovych, and Patten was lobbying for Yanukovych's chief of staff, named Sergei Lavochkin. And Lavochkin was the guy who paid the tens of millions of dollars to Manafort that he laundered. The document says Patten contacted members of Congress and their staffers and State Department officials and the press on behalf of his Ukraine clients. That's Yanukovych's chief of staff, Lavochkin. He contacted all them, lobbied all them. So this Patten guy might have a connection to the 2 EU lobbyists we brought up in episode 17, the 2 that Manafort tried to tamper with from jail, using Kalimnik as a go-between. And I wonder if one of the congressmen Patten had contacted that was mentioned in his criminal information packet was Dana Rohrabacher. That's speculation, but Dana is the guy who everyone half jokes about getting paid by Putin. He's also the guy that was briefed by Veselnitskaya about the Magnitsky Act, same as what happened in Trump Tower. Dana is basically the devil.
Come on, I want to talk to Dana. Dana, just relax. Come on. Dana. Can I talk to Dana?
There is no Dana, only Soul.
But it gets even more interesting, guys, because the charging document says it seems to implicate the Trump campaign. There's a law that says inaugurals and campaigns cannot accept foreign donations, right? We all know that. And Patten admitted to cheating that system by having a U.S. citizen, quote, straw donor, unquote, buy 4 tickets to the Trump inaugural for $50,000. The tickets went to Lavachnik, Kalimnik, Patten, and another unnamed Ukrainian. So those were the 4 tickets. Then Samuel Patten paid back the U.S. citizen, and then Lavachkin paid back Patten through a Cypriot account. And you guys remember that note I keep bringing up Manafort took during the Veselnitskaya Trump Tower meeting to use Cyprus as an intermediary? Was he talking about using Cyprus as an intermediary to funnel Putin money into the Trump inaugural fund? That could have been it too. And don't forget that Rohrabacher is also connected to Veselnitskaya. So there's all these weird connections that keep coming back.
Oh, yeah.
And the hub seems to be the inauguration. Given the insane size of the Trump inaugural fund, and many have been questioning the math on this for a really long time, but how many others have done this? Like how much money has gone through the Trump inaugural, and who is the U.S. citizen mentioned in the Patten criminal document? Well, I have an idea. I have a theory. And please note, this is just conjecture. But according to the cooperation agreement, Patten started cooperating on May 22nd. First of all, that's how leak-proof this investigation is. Patten has been cooperating for 3 months, and we didn't hear a peep about it until he decided to make the plea agreement public. Anyhow, he started cooperating on May 22nd. That same week, we reported that Mueller was looking into Vekselberg and his cousin Intrader's donations to the inaugural through Cohen's slush fund. Remember that guy? Intrader spoke to Cohen about investing in the taxi business and sat with him at the Trump inauguration. Vekselberg is Intrader's sanctioned pro-Russian Ukrainian-born cousin. So check out this clip from episode 30 back in May. If Vekselberg sounds familiar, it should. His cousin, Intrader, owns and operates a company called Columbus Nova, which paid $500,000 to the Cohen slush fund for access to Trump. If you remember, Cohen set up that slush fund selling access to Trump, and it was called Essential Consulting. It's fucking essential. You got it.
I love it.
Avenatti released this information that he got from a suspicious activity report, an SAR, leaked by a law enforcement officer who thought it was weird that 2 of them disappeared, but 1 of them didn't. So there was reporting just a couple of weeks earlier that Mueller was looking into the inaugural, and then bam, Patten starts cooperating with U.S. attorneys and Mueller. So my money is on Intrader as the straw man for this. He's a U.S. citizen. His Russian cousin donated $500 to the inaugural fund through Essential Consulting. And I think the 4th Ukrainian that got a ticket could be Vekselberg, but that might be a bridge too far. That's like, I'm just going out on a limb there. I don't get any money for that. This is the first time federal prosecutors have charged someone for actually dumping foreign money into the Trump inaugural. It's a big deal. And you know there's more to come. There was at least $50 million extra in that slush fund of an inaugural. And that's if he had Beyonce. Which he didn't. I think he had Scott Baio and I was going to say the Backstreet Boys, but that would have been a much better act than what he had. Back in January, we reported that after a year, there was still a bunch of watchdog groups trying to figure out what happened to all that Trump inaugural money. And as a reminder, they raised $107 million, which was twice as much as Obama's record-breaking 2008 inaugural. Imagine what Obama's inaugural cost in 2008. Double it, and then Trump spent that on his inaugural? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a shame no one came out to it.
No. And shame, I guess. And do you know who ran the organizing committee for the inaugural? It was Tom Barrack. That's the guy who got Manafort the job as Trump's campaign chairman.
Oh, snap.
Right? And for no money. For free. He'll work for free. Makes you wonder. Finally, Patten admitted to lying to Congress, specifically the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he withheld documents. Friday, the Intelligence Committee made a statement, quote, "We can confirm that Mr. Patten produced documents to the committee and was interviewed by the committee. Due to concerns about certain statements made by Mr. Patten, the committee made a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. While the charge and resultant plea today do not appear to directly involve our criminal referral, we appreciate their review of this matter," unquote. So no one knows if what the Intel Committee referred for has been addressed. So he lied to Congress, he violated FARA, he committed conspiracy to defraud the United States. He likely violated campaign finance laws. He probably participated in wire fraud and probably computer fraud. He certainly is guilty of tax fraud and bank fraud. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm totally guessing, but he only copped to violating FARA, which carries only a max of 5 years and a $250,000 fine. So his proffer must be bomb, right? To get off of all that stuff. Now, because when you think about what, that's kind of what's happening. Like they'll get that one either lying to Congress or lying to the FBI agents or whatever. But get this, he also is tied to Cambridge Analytica. This isn't over yet. He worked with them since 2014 on multiple overseas campaigns in the U.S. He was the guy, Christopher Wiley. Christopher Wiley is the pink-haired whistleblower from Cambridge Analytica. Remember that guy? He alleged Patten was in the U.S. testing voter response to Putin. So we are not hearing the end of this because he's deeply tied to Cambridge Analytica. And I'm sure he knows Brad Parscale, who is now Trump's 2020 campaign manager. It's like full circle. You go from one shitty campaign manager to the next, and they're all connected.
Yeah, why would you stop? Why would you stop making bad decisions?
Okay, you only know assholes. That's what happens. All right, guys, an update on this case is due to Judge Jackson on October 31st, so we'll have a happy Halloween when we find out what happens. But we'll be right back. Hey, Mueller junkies, thank you so much for supporting our show and supporting women in podcasting. I need to ask you for a quick favor that will not cost you a dime. Please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating, and then subscribe. That simple act goes a long way to helping us get the word out about the Mueller investigation, and more importantly, it expands our efforts to flip Congress blue in November. And don't forget, follow us on Twitter at MuellerSheWrote to be automatically entered to win a PlayStation 4. Don't ask. Thank you so much for listening. We would not be here without you. All right, guys, you ready for the Fantasy Indictment League?
Yes.
Excellent. We got another one. Woo. The guilty plea of Sam Patten counts. This was a result of a Mueller referral to the Southern District of New York, and he now has a full cooperation agreement with Mueller. So if you named Patten, if you named him by name, you get 2 points because he's an Outer Ring American. And he's been reported on a little bit in the Natasha Bertrand did a whole story on him back in April. Whoa. She interviewed him and everything. So if you named him, you get 2 points. But if you didn't name him, he counts as a rando.
Yay.
So you'll get 1 point for him if you did not, if you had a rando on your team, but only one. So if you had 2 randos, he doesn't count twice because he's only one rando.
Okay.
So,
I got one rando.
Nice. I took the rando off to put the Trump org on, so I got no points this week. So I don't know who's keeping track. I am not.
History
you got
is.
Cohen though.
I did get Cohen. I did, but now I'm. Yeah. Did you get Cohen?
No.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
So-
you're the only one of us that got Cohen.
All
I
right.
think.
Woo woo.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to change my picks this week based on my conjecture about this U.S. citizen in Patten's plea agreement. So I'm going to take Intrader, Donald Trump Jr., Cohen, Kushner, and the Trump org. How about you guys?
I'm going to keep all of mine. I think I did have Cohen, actually, though, now that I think about it, because it was Don Jr., Cohen. I had one rando, and then...
I think you had Butina and Kushner.
Butina and Kushner? That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
right.
keeping that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to do Bettina Still, Trump org. I'm going to do 2 randos again and Rohrabacher because I want that guy to go down.
No DT Jr.?
No DTJ. I'm taking DTJ and Kushner off for this week because I just don't think it's going to happen that quickly.
Okay.
And then it happens.
I'm trying to
and
get
you miss
points.
out. No, you're playing
Jr.
smart.
is 20 points.
Yeah, that's true. If it happens this week, I'm going to be so upset. Literally the only week this whole podcast
You'll be happy
I've
and
not
upset
had
at the
him on.
same time.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a new thing, by the way. I was on the 45th pod talking with Susan the other week. If you don't listen to that, check it out. It's awesome. It's a great podcast. And she brought up to me something I hadn't heard before. Have you heard about Bannon's hot tub?
No.
Okay. You can pick Bannon's hot tub as a fantasy indictment pick and have on your team. It's worth 1 million points. So here's what happened. Somebody found acid in Bannon's hot tub.
Oh, that's right.
So, like, why would you have acid in a hot tub? And
Sorry, what kind of acid?
Sulfuric acid.
Oh, my God.
Like Breaking Bad acid.
Yeah. Well, he looks like he does meth, so he could also be in the business.
Yeah, but it didn't use the acid to make the meth. They used the acid to dissolve bodies.
Right, exactly.
That's just what he bathes in to relax after.
That's what happened to his face.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so mean. Yeah, he's a toxic supervillain.
Yeah, he's like, well, this is what I am now.
Why does he have such wonderful toys? Yeah, maybe. He's a toxic supervillain. Somebody draw that up. I know I've got amazing comic book artists. Yeah, Bannon's hot tub, toxic.
Wow.
Avenger. Anyway, that's worth 1 million points. If you ever call that and for some reason something happens with Bannon's hot tub,
we find out.
You win the entire fantasy indictment league. That's just how it has to go. All right, time for sabotage. So late Friday night, the defense for Papadopoulos released his sentencing document, which confirms our theory that Papadop was already part of Trump's national security team prior to speaking with Mifsud, thereby blowing big holes through the conspiracy theories that Papadop was told about the dirt on Hillary before he was ever with Trump. And here to speak to us about the document today is mortgage broker, journalist, radio broadcaster, and producer of the Dworkin Report, Grant Stern. Grant, welcome to Mueller, She Wrote.
Thank you for having me on the program.
I really appreciate you being here. Your depth of knowledge blows my mind. So off the top, I was wondering what your thoughts were or the major takeaways for you from this sentencing memo.
Well, for starters, I think the excuse level here is on a scale of 1 to 10 at 11, that he was just trying to advance his career. And I think that just clearly establishes criminal motive, that he had something to gain by lying to the FBI. It's, I think, important that they mentioned Sergei Milyan, who was one of these Russian-speaking nationals who was friends with Trump and friends with other developers like Miami-based Jorge Perez. And he was kind of like a Chamber of Commerce guy, and that was what they considered the lure that drew their clients in. And then, of course, I mean, we've seen what the special counsel published. He said, hey, if you guys had been truthful with us, we would have picked this guy Mifsud up when he was in the United States. And they kind of blame Papadopoulos, and his lawyers are saying, hey, we were under virtual probation for the last 13 months. The whole world knows about us. We didn't know at the time that this was all going to go down this way. He wasn't trying to obstruct justice. So, the back and forth there is very interesting. But obviously what everybody is focused on is something that, nobody can see on this podcast, even though I'm winking and nodding at you guys.
Yeah, it's, I mean, you bring up a really good point, but the timing is so important because everybody was saying that, it was this big conspiracy and that he was going undercover for, spying on the Trump team, working for the feds. And we're like, no, he was actually quite an uncooperative asshole. And he didn't provide anything. In fact, I think it wasn't until his fourth proffer when they presented him with his own texts and emails and said, dude, you want to come on. And his search history and stuff, that he even cooperated. So it's like, come on, man. Cooperated.
Yeah.
So it's like,
on, man. Not only that, but something that the prosecutor's office mentioned in their filing, which is that after he spoke to the New York Times, they discharged him from being a witness in the case any further. And I think that is what they're going to argue in court. My big takeaway from both filings, the special counsel is going to show up and say, look, it would have been better if he had just kept his mouth shut instead of going out there and seeking publicity when he was supposed to be a cooperating witness. Now, the flip side to that is that George Papadopoulos actually confirmed one of the biggest, most amazing stories I ever wrote. The first story I wrote on the sternfacts.com, which was that the Trump-Russia dossier oil deal decoded. And in that story, which was simply a meta-analysis of everything that we knew about the Steele dossier, incorporating Scott Dworkin's recent report on it everything that was confirmed, some of the stories I had written that confirmed it. The one thing that popped out to me about all of it was that the night at the Mayflower Hotel was significant. It was a meeting of the minds. That's what I called it. And George Papadopoulos told the New York Times in December that it was a signal to meet. So a meeting of the minds is a real estate term that means there's a contract or agreement. And George kind of confirmed that very publicly. And I could see why the investigators would be upset about him spilling the beans on the line of their investigation, because then other people might try to cover up or lie or, do the same thing he did. Just try to play it all off and hope they'd get away with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've discussed and done many reports on the Mayflower meeting, the Marshall Plan, building reactors in Saudi Arabia, that whole thing with Bud and KT McFarlane working for Flynn, and Butina comes in there. I mean, the whole web is pretty ridiculous. But before we get too deep into those weeds, into the Russian weeds, what's up with his trip to Italy? Can you explain that to us and who was there and what was going on?
Well, George Papadopoulos' trip to Italy.
Yeah, it was mentioned in the sentencing report.
Well, as we've seen recently, Italy has a very strong and internationally oriented right-wing political party, and they just took power in the Italian government with a minority, but they do have political power now. So, George was flying all over the Middle East during the campaign. For him to be in Italy wouldn't be so unusual because he was really focusing on the Mediterranean countries. And, that's where he met Mifsud. And I mean, it just bears mention that the FBI has its main foreign office in Rome, because for good reason, because there's always been a lot of international political activity going through there. And I talk about the old Italian communist parties, which for many years had links to Moscow as well. So, I mean, it's just one of these things, like it's an international meeting place. The FBI has a very well-known office there, I guess for good reason, as you can see by George Papadopoulos' story. But, that's where he met the mysterious, his wife.
Mangianti.
Yes, Miss Mangianti, yes. And, what can you say? She's a real character herself, and a lot of people have noticed that she doesn't really have a very verifiable backstory, and Simona has an interesting accent. And I'll just say people have pitched that over to me and said, you should take a really close look at this.
Like, where is she from? Yeah, every time I hear her, I'm like, Sunday, Tuesday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday, Friday. But it is odd, and it's hard to place. I've been to Italy. I'm not an expert, but have you found anything out about that, or are you kind of still working on it?
That's next on the plate. Let's just say that we have some stuff brewing, but we haven't gone full deep dive yet because there really wasn't a reason. And now that he's not trying to challenge the plea deal, which never tends to work out, by the way, if you want to think about people who've challenged plea deals and lost, think about Republican Senator Larry Craig of the wide stance plea deal. Didn't work out for him. It's very difficult to challenge a plea deal once it's been entered into. And even worse, if you win, they can still admit all your statements against you, typically.
So for our listeners, really quick, because I know we've got a lot of younger listeners, Larry Craig was in, I think, public restrooms signaling to men in stalls next to him to engage in homosexual acts by sticking his foot under the stall. And when asked about why he was doing that, he said, I wasn't, I just have a wide stance. Basically, when I shit, I man spread, and so the foot went over into the stall. So, and I'm not gay.
That happened in the Minnesota airport, by the way.
Minnesota. Yeah.
It was not that long ago either. It was like 2005.
Well, those are pre-Tinder days, though. So, I mean, to be fair, you got to use the foot. A swipe left on the foot, I guess. But so the big question is, and I have to ask you because I know that you know all sorts of crazy secret shit, where is Mifsud?
Oh, he's certainly in hiding. I mean, you know, his wife, Simona, her everything that she's done in the last 3 months or so, buying into the conspiracy theories and chanting them, essentially, it brings into question her whole story, because she actually worked for Mifsud, if you recall. That's how she met, Papadopoulos. So, I mean, Mifsud has got to be in hiding. I mean, if not for his own safety, maybe Moscow has him. Maybe he's not with us anymore. I mean, this man had a lot of high-level connections at the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the MFA was one of the main organs used in Russia's intervention in our elections. So, you know, a lot of these people tend to have heart attacks very suddenly when Russia's upset with them. And, you know, we don't know if he's still around or not, but I believe that it was BuzzFeed that got copies of the text messages with his romantic partner. And, you know, we just don't know where he is today, but he has obviously some very good reasons to hide. He certainly seems to be at the center of a massive investigation that it probably doesn't end with him at all, but it's certainly, you know, an important starting point, because that's really where the authorities did actually start.
Yeah, you're right. They have mysterious heart attacks, or they fall down in their hotel room multiple times and hit their heads. Or I think recently a VP of a steel company was fell out of his 20-story apartment. There's all sorts of...
Yes, they fall out of apartment windows at a very, very high pace.
Anyway, we really appreciate you having you on today. You've really kind of given us some clarification on this Papadop case. I know we're looking forward to having you on soon for a bonus episode on Qatar, because that's one of your specialties. But for now, can you tell our listeners where they can find your blog, where they can find your reports and your tweets and everything, so they can follow you?
Sure. Go ahead and follow me at Grant Stern on Twitter, building the brand there. And then my website is thesternfacts.com, thesternfacts.com. I write for WashingtonPress.com sometimes. It's been a little while. They were on a summer hiatus or whatnot. And you can also check out the Dworkin Report. I produce that. We release anywhere from 3 to 7 podcasts per week. Some of them are deep dives, and some of them are, interviews. And Twitter's the best way to get a hold of me. Say hi afterwards and tell me what you think.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time. So thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.
It's my pleasure, and I'm going to tweet an article about George Papadopoulos from last November so everybody can check it out.
Will do. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, guys, I wanted to bring back the Q&A. I missed it, so we're going to do a little Q&A today. I still don't have a song for Q&A, so Q&A. Here we go.
A QAnon song would be really funny.
Does QAnon have songs?
They need a theme song.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need a Q&A theme song. I think somebody made one. I can't remember.
Oh. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, what?
I'm my fantasy indictment league. I'm taking Bettina off, superseding indictments for her off, and I'm putting DTJ back on. Okay.
Right.
I'm
done. Not too late. No worries.
I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
No, it doesn't count.
Yeah. If you any time between now and the end of the episode, you want to change that?
I'm gonna call you at midnight.
All right. So. At Clint Jenkins 85 asked, what are the odds on Trump firing Sessions post-midterms, regardless if Dems take control? Seems like a given no matter who wins. I think it would be incredibly stupid of him to fire Sessions at any time, because it's going to look like obstruction of justice. He's tried to fire him multiple times. McGahn has testified to that, I'm sure, in his 30-hour talk. And if Dems take control, like we were just talking about, he's no way he's going to get anybody confirmed. There's just no way. And that means that Rosenstein would take over the investigation. Now, he could fire Rosenstein, and that would put Benchkowski as the attorney general, and he's a pro-Trump, pro-Putin fuckface. Remember, he represented Alpha Bank.
Yeah.
Who's implicated in the Steele dossier, and whose communication servers were talking to Trump Tower early on in the campaign. So that could happen.
But there'd be super consequences. I don't think he'd want to do that.
No. Unless you're already going to get impeached, like, let's go out screaming.
But if he knew, the things Trump would do if he knew for sure he was getting impeached in like a week, he would go crazy.
I think he's doing it right now.
Oh, probably, yeah.
At Connor_grunts. I'm glad you grunt. He wants to know if we think Mueller will retry the charges Manafort wasn't convicted on, or if it's really not worth the time since there's another trial in D.C. From what I know of Mueller, I think he would retry him. I don't think that he would consider anything not worth it or worth it. I think he's after justice, and I think he knows that there was one juror that was hung on those 10 counts, and I think he might do it, but he's asked for more time.
It's an easy win for him, and he must know that. Yeah.
But I think the reason he asked for more time is to see if they can work out a plea deal with Manafort.
Oh.
Because if they do, then I don't think they'll retry. That might be part of the deal. We won't retry those 10 counts, and we won't take you to court in D.C., but you've got to plead guilty to this, and then you got to give us all of the information on the superseding indictments we were going to drop on you.
Yeah.
So I think if Manafort doesn't cooperate, I think he'll retry him.
Interesting.
And then would he be defending himself in 2 separate cases at the same time? Is that how that would work, or do you think they would postpone the trial that's coming up this month?
No, I think they would probably do the 10 counts after the DC trial.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can do them at the same time. I think that that's probably undue stress.
Okay, good.
Or something.
That's good. That's fair. That is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. What's your schedule? 2 court cases back to back,
That's what he deserves, but like it's
it's kind of messed up.
That's true.
Not a thing.
At Rob Duckmoto asked if Trump pardons somebody for crimes he's connected with, does that make it harder for him to be charged for related crimes? I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think so. I think if Trump pardons somebody for crimes he's connected with, that actually is an abuse of power, and I think that that's an impeachable offense. And if we flip the Congress blue, which means you have to get out and vote, but I can't send you money, but Jordan can.
Jordan Coburn here.
Jaleesa can.
Yeah, send me money.
Not you.
Send me money. My Venmo is at Jordan Coburn 1.
At Caitlin Schmidt not at Caitlin, just Caitlin Schmidt on Facebook wants to know if we think Mueller will actually stop announcing things now. And if not, when? September 1st feels made up. It is made up. First of all, if you're going to do the 60-day rule, that's September 7th. I think, again, Giuliani was just doing a Labor Day thing. Don't wear white, don't indict. And I actually think that Mueller's not going to stop. He may withhold specific big-time indictments.
Yeah.
He might just seal those and wait until after the election and then let them all go, like in a big flutter of awesomeness.
Doves. That's great. It's the onomatopoeia for indictments.
Weird. Sorry. But that's how I think it's made up too. I actually think we should pay attention to what happens on Tuesday, and all of next week for that matter. It's still quite a bit of ways out from the election. It's close, and also Trump's not running.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. It's the first time I thought about that today when you mentioned it earlier in the episode. He's not a candidate. So, would that even apply? It'd be like a courtesy, I guess, to Republicans, but they don't deserve that.
Well, yeah, it's kind of up to, I just don't know how Mueller thinks. He might just, he seems like a conservative fellow, but he also seems like a justice guy. So,
true.
I don't know. Because remember when we talked about his dissertation, how he thought, even though the case was lost on a technicality, that it wasn't what was right.
Yeah, it was a moral issue for him. Yeah,
even though technically he shouldn't indict after Labor Day, he might be thinking like, I have to think of what's in the best interest of justice and the United States of America, and that might be to do that. So.
Yeah. I mean, especially like the Mifsud thing's a good example. I think there are things that have happened that have impeded the investigation because they didn't come out quickly enough, information. So like Papadopoulos withholding information about Mifsud and stuff. If they stop investigating, basically, or they slow down their investigation, that could make it so people literally leave the country that they need to talk to or something.
Right, yeah. They don't want to, they wouldn't imperil the investigation in favor of the election. And some people think that he'll just keep investigating and arresting people and stuff, and he's very good at keeping things from leaking, so that he wouldn't just he would just make sure that information didn't get out. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think it matters. I think he's going to bring indictments when indictments need to be brought, regardless of the election. I think that the September 1st thing is bullshit. But
they're hopeful. They've given a lot of deadlines that were bullshit, so that's why this could be the same.
But I'm also very brash compared to Mueller, so I wear other than white shirts. Sarah Oatman has asked on Facebook if we think Mueller has referred Jared and Ivanka et al. To other U.S. attorneys' offices. I think it depends on what it's for. If it's for hotelier shit in Azerbaijan or her jewels and diamond laundering shit, I think he will hand that off to New York.
Yeah, just like the other money stuff.
Yeah, and if anything Russian happens, it'll come back to him. And it's, again, not just to launder the evidence, but not to just to keep his jurisdiction intact and his scope small, so he can't have holes blown in his investigation for that, especially now that Andrew Miller is taking a subpoena and appeal up to the Supreme Court. They'll be like, he's done nothing but Russia stuff, so you're out of luck. He's not unconstitutional here, even though he does have the right to do that. So I think keeping that scope close, but also, putting out the tendrils, that whack-a-mole thing I was talking about, so it makes it really difficult for anybody to squash this investigation now that it's taking place in multiple areas.
Right, almost like the mini Mueller theory, but in different jurisdictions.
Yes, mini Mueller's out on the march in the
it's like
trenches.
a multiverse of Muellers.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
A million Mueller march would be really cool in Washington.
Trump daycare probably is like Jerry daycare.
Best Rick and Morty episode.
You brought your Trump with you? Oh. At CGW459, Cindy wants to know what we think of the lame duck meltdown and what citizens can do if this goes down like that. She's referring to what I was talking about earlier, a Republican loss to keep the House and Trump firing Sessions to replace him with someone who will subvert the investigation, though that wouldn't go through, so he might fire Rosenstein, putting Benchkowski in charge. That's kind of what the lame duck meltdown is. And again, I think he's just out of luck, because if we flip to Congress, that's where the power comes from in these situations, and we can feel that because we have nothing we can do about the Kavanaugh nomination. We have nothing we can do about the president. There's no check on him. And a lot of independents are going to vote Democratic just to keep the check on the president. It happens in the second year all the time. I just think it's going to be much bigger this time as a referendum on this, particularly now with those poll numbers that we're seeing.
Yeah, and a lot of Republicans, especially with what just happened with McCain, too. It's like Trump is so tainted in the eyes of people that are truly GOP members.
Yeah, that flag half-mast and then raising it back up and then not doing it in the first place and then having to have the Foreign Legion or having to have the American Legion tell him to put it back at half-staff, and he's like, okay, and then he does. It's like, oh my God, why are you such a fucking bitch?
Yeah.
And no offense to bitches. At All Things Mole 1 asked, what is up with Trump's obsession with ore? Like, what's behind it? I've seen suggestions that it's because he's been tough on Russian organized crime over the years. Yes, that's absolutely it. And it probably boils down to a guy named Simeon Mogilevich. Greg Proops has brought him up. He's the crime boss of crime bosses in Russia. People call him Don Simeon. He's really a fucking bad dude. In fact, he might be why Bannon had acid in his hot tub. Like, he is insanely, like, think of our mob bosses, Gotti and all that, like, nothing compared to this guy.
Wow.
And he is real close to Putin, and I guarantee you he had a hand in orchestrating this and had a hand in having Trump over the barrel, for example. So I do think that that's why Orr's involved. Again, that's all conjecture. I think we'll be talking about Don Simeon more as we get closer to finding out how all this Russia stuff ties together, but he's definitely a part of it, and I think that's why he's going after Orr. And Nellie Orr worked for Fusion GPS, who, did Oppo research on him. He just hates people who don't like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me it makes sense because it gives him an opportunity to keep peddling this completely dead and null point that the dossier is what kicked off the FISA warrant. And
I love the picture of Nunes like going into Europe trying to spy on an MI6 operative, like putting shoe polish on his face, and he's got like his headphones on listening to the Mission Impossible theme
fake mustache.
Yeah. I'm Fevin Mumez. I'm here to speak to you about Christopher Steele. Like, it just sounds like the dumbest fucking shit to me. Like,
yes.
Oh, I can't. It's the picture in my mind is hilarious.
It's cute. It's like he's going out on his own little adventure trying to investigate. Like, if this were a movie, it should be played by Macaulay Culkin or something. You know?
Yeah.
Like a My First Passport thing, just where it's like he's just going out there just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm on my trip to the big city. I'm going to figure out what's going on, guys.
You're gonna make it after all. And he throws his hat in the air. And then he runs after his hat and trips and falls. It's awesome. At Sarah Bitts asked if the 60-day tradition even applies when Trump isn't up for election in November, and we kind of already covered that. I personally don't think it does. But
I don't think it should.
But Mueller might.
Yeah.
It can have an influence on even a midterm, even though none of them are running.
Mm-hmm.
Just it can become a referendum on the current administration's party affiliation.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. We will see what happens in the next. That's the best thing. I can sit here and make predictions.
We're going to find out.
Will or will not happen.
Mm-hmm.
At Dark Fury MN, Minnesota, Dark Fury, Minnesota, asked if Mueller could be holding off on Cush and Jr. Until the midterms, knowing Donald Trump might go ballistic and attempt to shut down the investigation. I don't think so. I don't think he does anything strategic like that. I think when he's got his indictments ready, the one thing I could see him doing is sealing them and putting them aside for something like that. But Donald Trump's already going ballistic, so...
Yeah, I don't think Mueller is afraid of what Trump is capable of, like, between now and the end of it. I think he just wants to take his time and almost tune it out, but then he has to tune in things that are relevant, so that's got to be confusing for Mueller, like what to care about and what to not care about.
Well, I think what he's done is he's set up an investigation in such a way that it's bulletproof, that he's got mini Muellers all over the place, he's got dead men switches, he's got fail-safes, that he doesn't have to pay attention to that kind of thing. He can just focus on the investigation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's doing.
Unless it's evidence in a tweet.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right. And you've seen that thing where he's like, stop fucking breaking the law so I can finish this. Maria Carmona asked to explain why one would hold oneself in contempt of court. I think she's speaking of Andrew Miller. And I think we've touched on this a little bit. Basically, when you hold yourself in contempt of court, it gives you the right to appeal that finding and that case that you're in contempt of, and that's his vehicle to get the constitutionality of Mueller's existence heard at a high court.
Okay, yeah.
So that's why he's doing that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a mechanism to get this up to the D.C. appellate court.
That makes sense.
Eventually, maybe the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Gypsy Khan wants to know if Mueller's team hasn't communicated with 45's lawyers in weeks because they have enough info to drop indictments on him with or without his testimony. Yeah, I think it's because they're just going to drop a subpoena, whether they do it pre-election or post-election. I think that's what they're thinking. They're like, we're not going to talk to him. We're never going to talk to him. And Giuliani even said, you're not talking to him after September 1st.
Oh,
so he's like, all right, well, here you go. Take this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of what we think. Joe Otto wants to know if a vice president can be indicted. Yes.
Totally, and should be.
And Kevin at K_2_T asked me if Jeeps are still cool. The answer is no.
What?
And
I have a Jeep.
I love Jeeps. The room is split.
That's actually why I said no. I'm just fucking with you guys.
Yeah, I know. I guess it depends on the Jeep too, but almost all Jeeps look cool when they're like a little dirtied up.
I do. I like Jeeps.
I got a 2-wheel drive Jeep. That is not cool. Objectively.
You can convert that.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you wanted to spend a whole shitload of money for nothing.
Yeah. For all the time I spent off-roading, bro.
Gonna hit those speed bumps like a fucking champ. All right, thank you guys for listening this week. Please spread the word. This is about to get crazy, and we are the only place right now you can get all the Mueller news in easy to swallow morsels. So please become a patron before we stop undervaluing ourselves at patreon.com/MuellerSheWrote. Head to Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes. Give us a rating and subscribe. That's like the #1 way we can get the word out. And thank you so much for all of your support. I've been AG.
I've been Jaleesa Johnson.
I've been Jordan Coburn.
And this is Mueller, She Wrote. Mueller, She Wrote is produced and engineered by AG with editing and logo design by Jaleesa Johnson. Our sound engineering is courtesy of Resonant Recordings. Our digital media director and subscriber managers are Jordan Coburn, Sarah Lee Steiner, and Sarah Hirschberger Valencia. Fact-checking and research by AG with support from Jaleesa Johnson and Jordan Coburn. Our web design and branding are by Joelle Reeder with Moxie Design Studios, and our website is MuellerSheWrote.com.